If you want walkable, quaint little towns, and you also want access to big errand day convenience, then you can live in any section of Whidbey Island. It's just gonna look very different depending on which direction you go. I'm Kristen Stavros, Stavros Homes, and we're here to talk about the difference between the north and the south of Whidbey Island. These are usually like the big choices. People say they want to live in the north or they want to live in the south. What we forget about is there's central Whidbey as well, and that's a whole nother story. So a little bit of orientation. Whidbey Island is this 55-mile long skinny island in the Pacific Northwest. It is connected by a bridge in the north and a ferry in the south. It has a Naval Air Station base in the north end, a cute, quaint seaside village of Coopville in the center. Then you've got Green Bank, and it goes on to like Langley is very infamous for its cute seaside, quaint town as well. And then a lot of space in the south end with it connecting to Mukilteo and close to Seattle. If you are taking the bridge off the north, you've got to drive all the way around onto the I-5, kind of equidistant to get to Seattle from central Whidbey, so from the Coopville area, but that's your little orientation. So a lot of people say that's the north end of the island, oh, that's the south end. It's usually a little bit derogatory talking about either end, but you usually can say like, I live on north or south end of Whidbey Island. So what are the difference? The biggest is kind of vibe and pace. So the north end, you've got the influence of the Navy. You've got Oak Harbor, which is the, out of 70,000 people on Whidbey Island, more than 30,000, maybe 40,000 live in Oak Harbor. So it is the bustling hub. It is where most people live. It's got big box stores like Walmart and Home Depot, lots of conveniences. So that is kind of the Oak Harbor area. It tends to be very rural, very quickly. And then central Whidbey Island, you've got a lot of expansive prairie lands. You've got big farms like open ag. And then in the south end, there's a lot of agriculture going on, but it's in much smaller little pockets. It tends to be more treed. And it's just, it's more like Langley was basically established by hippies. It's got more of an hippie artistic vibe. The next thing to consider is budget and costs across the island. So the South Island tends to have a much higher price point. That's generally just because there's not a lot of big neighborhoods. There's not a lot of big developments there. And there's a lot of shoreline and a lot of money. A lot of people like to have the convenience of the ferry to get off the island. And so price points are just higher. Oak Harbor tends to be the most economical because the Navy influence. We've got a lot of families, and there's been a lot bigger building projects. More development happens in Oak Harbor. Depending on whether you're in the south or the north, you're going to rely on some way of getting off the island. Now, people who live basically Green Bank South tend to rely more on the ferry system, but the ferry can be tricky. In the summertime, when everybody's trying to get off the island or onto the island at the same time, you don't want to get caught in that if you're just a local person trying to get back to your home. I've sat in the ferry line for 4 to 5 hours trying to get off the south end before. So nowadays, you can watch on the cams. So like Whidbey Telecom has these great cameras. You can kind of get a sense of how busy it is, but you're just going to know that there's going to be busier times than others. Abrupt tidal changes can also make the ferry a little tricky if it goes down to one ferry or if there's some reason for the ferry not to be working. On the north end, you can take the bridge. So Deception Pass State Park has one of the most iconic bridges of all time, Deception Pass Bridge, and that's one point, to get off the island, you do have to kind of skirt by Anacortes, but you can skirt out, outside of the town. That's the other way you'll be really dependent off island. There is a third way off the island, but it doesn't get you where most people are going. So there is a ferry that takes you to the Olympic Peninsula from Coopville, and that connects to Port Townsend, which is wonderful and amazing to visit and travel, but it's not like Port Townsend has that much more shopping or is worth the inconvenience of a ferry to get to, like, say, Sequim or Port Angeles, where there is a lot more shopping or conveniences. But a great other option for just getting off the island and seeing something else. Most people are trying to get to SeaTac Airport when they're leaving the island, or a lot of us, and we have the Whidbey SeaTac shuttle, which is really convenient. It just takes people from Whidbey Island to the SeaTac and back. That's all it does. So it's really convenient and really quick. what kind of microclimates and weather you need for either gardening or outdoor pursuits and hobbies is really going to impact which direction you go. If you're into really, dog parks, that might affect things. If you need pickleball courts or like a public pool, our only public pool is in Oak Harbor. So these are all sorts of other factors that we can weigh as we figure out what is the right place for you. The one thing that ends up really deterring people or attracting them to certain areas is that we cannot get around the Naval Air Station base and its jet noise associated with the central outlying field airstrip where they do touch and go practice for an intense period of time, and or the main base up north where you're going to have planes flying in and out most of the time. So those are considerations, and we've got an awesome jet noise map that gives you generally where you're going to get the most noise. It's not an absolute certain, but it'll give you a great idea that we can share with you, and that'll help. I would say that, like, if a client tells me they want quick access to Seattle and they want arts and community involvement, then they probably want to be down south. Whidbey Island Center for the Arts is in Langley. It's where a lot of our productions happen, our big productions, and there's more arts going on. It's also a bigger retirement population, so people have time to get more involved and do those things. If you want quick convenience and having, like my parents, they wanted a yacht club, a place to have their boat, and they wanted to have Home Depot so they could do lots of projects. So we thought Coupeville, Oak Harbor was probably the best place for those types of people. But if you usually when people give me their interests and their preferences, I can whittle it down pretty quickly to where I think people are going to be the most vibrant, have the most richest life here on Whidbey Island. Another thing that is always a concern for people is access to healthcare, the hospital, emergency services. And while we'll cover that a little more in depth in another video, our hospital is in Coupeville, our main hospital. Our second biggest accessible hospital is in Anacortes. And then you also can get to a lot of amazing hospitals via the ferry, but it's quite a drive. I'm thinking Everett and Seattle. There's so much wonderful medical help around the Puget Sound, but Whidbey Island is a little limited in that. Three big swing factors I find with buyers when they're trying to decide where to be on the island is around their commute, the community they want, and their budget restrictions. If people really want big water views there, but they have a low price point, it's going to really restrict us on where we can go, and it tends to be more central and north Whidbey Island. If they have to have waterfront and huge views and budget is of no concern, which are very few people, then the south end is where you're going to find the most luxurious properties, the most beautiful waterfront properties. So if you're ready to narrow it down and you want a free, no obligation, no pressure consultation about where you might want to land on Whidbey Island, give me a call, download our free location guide below, like and subscribe to this channel, and you'll get more information on Whidbey Island.